Rightio, so we're going to just cover some of your basic obedience behaviours now. Boss, so we've been working towards sits, downs, place, or bed, I should say, and also this engagement behaviour where he's engaging with us in an anticipation to gain reinforcement. Okay, good. Now the reinforcement that I typically give him when he's just doing a sit like this and being calm for me is just a nice pat. He does quite enjoy that physical touch and praise. Hey, good boy. And occasionally I'll get down here like this and give him a cuddle. Good. But again, just being mindful not to get him aroused. And if he does break out like this, obviously it wasn't a commanded behaviour yet, so I'm okay with that, but I'm going to disengage from him. So I'm only engaging with him and only praising and patting him when he's in a sit behaviour, okay? Just because it makes it really clear for the dog that this is how they gain affection. So if they want it, right? So if your dog comes and sits at you, it's just a way for them to communicate that, you know, they're just checking in. Good boy. Right, so back to our sits, okay? So essentially how we've taught this behaviour is through luring, then we've added then we've started naming the behaviour, then we've added some pressure, and now we are at, essentially the dog is now learning to avoid the pressure by following the command, okay? So, good. Just because I love him being calm like this, I'm going to tell him he's being good and use a conditioned reinforcer and give him some reinforcement, okay? So, but back into how we teach the sit, okay? We need to get a lure, which is a piece of food. We're using Prime 100 in this video. Great product, pretty appetitive for most dogs. I'd say 9.5 out of 10 dogs love it. There is always the odd dog that doesn't. Okay, but what we do is we just put it in our hand like this, okay? So squishing it between our thumb and our finger, our pointer, and we want to deliver it in front of the dog's nose and get them to start engaging with it. When they start engaging with it, like Boss is, okay, we let that food go. And what that essentially teaches the dog is that if they follow that lure and they persist, they're going to gain access to that reward. Okay, so if he continues, and to start off with, we want to make this quite easy, okay? We want to really just only have the dog come maybe even an inch, 2 inches to gain access to that food. And then we can start doing things like this, where we make it quite difficult, right? And we can make it more fun, okay? But what we've essentially done there is charged the lure. The dog knows I follow the lure, eventually I'm going to get it, okay? So now he's just doing lots and lots of sits. Essentially we present the food in front of his nose and we go up and over the back of the head, and as his bum hits the ground, we release the lure. Very simply, okay? And we don't have any commands on it at this stage. This is just basic 101s to luring, okay? We present the food up over the back of the head, release the food into the dog's mouth. Okay, so once we've established that he's 99 or 95% likely to follow that lure into the sit, we can then start naming the behaviour. So what that means is essentially we can start putting a word over it. So what we would do is we would say the word SIT, okay? We'd wait 1 to 2 seconds, present the lure, and then lure the dog into position. He knows the word, okay? So it's very likely his bum's going to hit the ground before I present the lure, but if it doesn't, we'll be able to give you an accurate demonstration, okay? I'm going to get him out of the sit. Now I'm going to say sit. Oh, right, knocks a crumb. Sit. And release the food, okay? Sit. Release the food. Sit. Okay, now, once we've done that, what we can establish is that over a number of reps, which we've done with Boss, he has an association with the word sit, and that means put my bum on the ground to receive the reinforcement. Now, how we can make that a little bit easier for him to understand is by layering pressure. Okay, so what we will essentially do is we will ask him to sit. We're going to, as we push the lure over the back of his head, we're going to lift up and apply a tiny bit of pressure to the lead. Once his bum hits the ground, that lead pressure comes off immediately and we release the food into his mouth. Okay, very simply again. Sit. Fantastic. Now that we're naming the behavior and it's 99% consistent in this environment, we can start to incorporate a release or a terminal marker, okay? For us, it's going to be the word free, okay? So essentially what that's going to look like now is we are going to, he's trying to figure out the behavior. Sit. Free. Okay? So essentially what that means is it gives the indication to the dog that when I say sit, I want you to stay in that behavior until you then hear the word free. Okay? Being terminal marker terminates the behavior. Okay? So, start again. Sit. Free. Okay, and as you can see, I am using lead pressure still, but I can pretty well fade this lure completely now. Okay, so, Boss, sit. Free. Okay, so now I no longer have to worry about using food because I've associated the mechanics to the command, and now with that leash pressure, it's that extra little bit of help for him to understand that, okay, when I hear that word, to avoid that leash pressure coming on, I put my bum on the ground and then I get released and rewarded. Or down the track, we're going to start introducing some duration to the behavior, but we're going to use our condition reinforcer good to actually extend that behavior in duration, okay? So what that looks like is, so without food in my hand, because we've now faded the lure, Boss knows what the word SIT means, we've got pressure to back it up, okay? And we're now working on increasing duration. So what that would look like is essentially, Boss, sit. Good. So he's in the position. I can use his condition reinforcer, which is good. What that indicates to him is what he's doing right now is perfect, correct, and to keep doing it to gain reinforcement. Good. And now I have the ability to start to increase the level of distraction by moving around, okay, and by moving away from him while he's in position. Being mindful that I'm very conscious of how my lead looks. Giving him some feedback there. He went to go into a down. Didn't ask him to down, I asked him to sit. I'd like him to stay in a sit. So I say, I keep that pressure on until he's back in the sit. Okay? Now, as far as increasing duration, as I said, good. We have the ability here to use our condition reinforcer to tell the dog that they're correct, to prolong that behavior, okay? And we also now have the pressure we can reapply if the dog goes to break. So we're still managing the dog completely on lead, okay? But essentially we can ask the dog to do something, and now we also have the ability to back it up with some leash pressure if he chooses to either not comply, okay, so chooses not to do the behavior in the beginning, or if he chooses to leave the behavior or change the behavior during the behavior, okay? Might be a little bit complicated there, but free, good boy. What we're gonna do there is release him out, okay? Present the food, give him a good boy, okay? Because he's so smart, we can now do something like this. Boss, sit, good. I should be able to move a fair bit around. Good. Okay. Building the stamina and the duration in the behavior. Good. And at any point now, I can release and reinforce. And just because I want the value there. I used the word good quite a few times without delivering reinforcement because I want to still deliver value to him. I want to give him some food on the release. Boss! Oh, mate. Come, mate. Rightio, I couldn't have done that if I tried, but essentially the lead got tangled on the tripod and he pulled it over. That's all good. So, as you can see, we have now got the sit command pretty well ingrained. We have now the ability to back it up with some leash pressure. We know how to reinforce that behavior. So it's pretty well a complete behavior. All we've got to do now is go and proof it in more environments. So what that looks like is essentially going to the local cricket field or footy field or something like that. Typically when it's a pretty low distraction environment is the best to start off with. Ideally pretty early in the morning or late in the afternoon or something like that where there isn't a lot of people frequenting the area. If it's the common dog park, right, stay away from it. We want to be in a pretty empty and very neutral environment when we're going to start proofing this sort of stuff. Obviously the reps are done in the backyard or the front yard or whatever that looks like for you. But once we get to the point where we want to proof it, we want to take him out of the house, do it in a couple of new environments. We want those environments to be really low distraction to start off with. And once we've given him some exposure to multiple environments that are low distraction, we can start to increase the level of distraction by decreasing the distance to it. We don't want to go from, you know, a cricket field Thursday afternoon completely empty to cricket field Saturday morning, you know, 2 teams of cricket running around, parents, cars, kids, dogs, all of that sort of stuff. That is extreme sports dog training. That's like a fair way down the road for us after we've done a lot of the proofing in other environments. Bunnings Timber Yard is actually a really good place to do some proofing first thing in the morning, and you know, even through the day is pretty cool. But essentially just hop out of the car, get him to do some behaviors just in the little alleyways there, back in the car, home. Happy days. Cool, so that's our sits. Essentially, again, just recapping, we're now asking him for the behavior and applying leash pressure. Okay, I'll give you one more demonstration of that. Let's go. Okay, so I don't need food, and I don't even need food to reinforce him in the end. Yes, fantastic to do some reps and keep the reinforcement association, okay? But you don't have to do every rep with food as reinforcement, okay? You can use praise and pats and stuff like that. Boss, sit. Good. Free. So he's obviously a pretty happy dog, but with this, I want him to actually be pretty chill in this reinforcement. I'm gonna give him lots of love. Hey, you're a good boy, and tell him that he's a good boy. But I'm not gonna give him food, number one, and I'm also gonna try and reduce the arousal, okay? So once he gets that, he's sort of mouthing me a little bit there. Once he does that, I'm just going, okay, that's enough, mate. We've done too much, okay? We don't want him to increase in arousal, and if he does, the consequence needs to be that our presence gets removed. So what that is negative reinforcement, okay? So it's the removal of our presence, okay? Or sorry, it's negative punishment. It's the removal of our presence, which the dog finds punishing, okay? So he learns over time, he's like, oh, every time I get excited, they go away. So maybe I should be excited, but just like inwardly excited, not outwardly excited, okay? So excited and happy dog, but not Fruit Loop, out of control, doesn't know what's going on, no ears, over aroused, that sort of stuff. Okay, good boy. So that's our sits.